Blood pooled on the hardwood, warm against my cheek, the copper temps filling my mouth. My shoulder hung useless, every breath sharp enough to cut. In the doorway stood my sister, Claire. Arms folded, eyes unreadable, while Mason's heavy boots retreated down the hall. She didn't kneel beside me. She didn't call for help. She just said it in a voice so calm it sounded rehearsed. "You should have signed the papers, Emily." And then she was gone. I'm Captain Emily Carter, U.S. Army Medical Corps, 34 years old. I've patched up soldiers in field hospitals under rocket fire. I've studied my hands over torn arteries, while helicopters thudded overhead. I've seen men bleed out in desert dust, and still kept my voice even, but nothing in my career prepared me for my own sister watching me get beaten in my own home, her words slicing deeper than Mason's fists ever could. That night had been quiet, too quiet until the pounding started. Not the polite knock of a family visit, but the furious pounding of someone who believed they had the right to break their way in. When the doorframe splintered, Mason's face was the first thing I saw. Red with rage, sweat darkening the collar of his shirt. The second thing I saw was Claire, half a step behind him, not looking at me, but scanning the apartment like she was already erasing herself from the scene. I knew why they were there the week before. They'd brought over a glossy brochure for a 100-acre horse ranch outside Austin. "It's our dream," Claire had said. The way kids talk about running away to join the circus. All they needed, they claimed, was my signature on the loan as a guarantor. A $1.2 million mortgage, more than twice my annual base pay. And I had said no, not angrily, not dismissively, just no. Because I knew what would happen if their big plans collapsed. And I couldn't be the one to lose my home, my career, my security clearance over someone else's gamble. Mason didn't see it that way. In his mind, I was a traitor to family, to loyalty, to some unwritten code that demanded I sacrifice everything for them. His hands were on me before I could step back, shoving me into the wall hard enough to rattle the framed flag above my desk. My training told me to stay calm, assess injuries, find an exit. My instincts told me to fight. But when my eyes found Claire searching for the sister I'd grown up sharing hand-me-downs and secrets with, all I saw was a stranger. Her sentence still hangs in the air for me even now. "You should have signed the papers." As if a line of ink could have erased what was happening in that moment. As if my refusal was the crime, and the bruises blooming across my skin were just the inevitable punishment. I wish I could say that night came out of nowhere, that the violence was some random storm I never saw forming. But the truth is, I'd been watching the clouds gather for years. Quietly at first, like the way a room changes when the air gets too heavy. Before ATHUNDERCLAP. Claire and I grew up in a house where uniforms hung like second skins, and the smell of boot polish lingered in the hallway. Our father was Army, our mother a nurse who followed him from base to base. We learned early that discipline and loyalty weren't suggestions, they were orders. I wore those values like armor. Claire wore them like a borrowed coat, something she could shrug off when it felt too tight. By the time I shipped out to my first deployment, Claire had dropped out of college. She said it was temporary, just until she figured out what she really wanted. What followed were years of short-lived jobs, bartending, selling cars, running a boutique for a few months before it folded. I sent postcards from the Middle East. She sent photos from music festivals. We were different, but we were still sisters, or so I thought. Then Mason arrived. A former Marine discharged early after a knee injury. All easy smiles and polished charm the first time we met at a barbecue. But underneath, I saw something else. The way his hand lingered too tightly on Claire's arm when she laughed. The subtle corrections when she spoke, like he was editing her in real time. I'd been around enough soldiers to recognize control when I saw it. It rarely starts with shouting. It starts with shaping. Still, a year later, I stood beside Claire as her maid of honor at a wedding in Austin that looked like a magazine spread. A live band, crystal centerpieces, champagne you don't buy on a budget. I smiled for photos, but inside I couldn't stop thinking about the bills. Mason's landscaping business was just breaking even. Claire wasn't working. They didn't have the savings for this, and it wasn't long before the calls started. First small amounts, then bigger. "Just until the next contract comes through," Mason would say. I told myself it was family, that this was what you did. But every time I said yes, I felt a little piece of that armor I'd carried since Fort Bragg start to crack. I didn't know it yet, but those cracks were how the storm would find its way in. In the military, we train for every enemy outside the wire, but no one prepares you for the battle inside your own bloodline. I learned that loyalty can be weaponized, that family can turn into the sharpest blade you'll ever face. So now I tell every soldier, every survivor, draw your boundaries in ink, not pencil. Protect yourself fiercely, even from those you once trusted most. Because the greatest honor isn't in sacrificing everything for someone else, it's in surviving, standing tall, and refusing to let anyone write your story for you.